podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Ospreys Eyrie.
Hello and welcome back to the Ospreys Eyrie podcast, the podcast who just wanted a quiet week. That's all I wanted, was just a quiet week.
I had just arrived for like a weekend away with like my partner's friends. And as we arrived at the accommodation, I checked my phone and I saw a number of messages saying Booth's going at the end of the season. And the whole weekend disappeared into a hole.
Well, I had just gotten in from work because I finished relatively early, and they dropped the Behind the Mask episode thing as I was walking through the door. And I walked through the door and saw my partner and my son, and I was trying to hold him and console him because he was upset. Clearly, the news that Booth was leaving. But also trying to watch this video, and I could only watch it like 2-3 minute increments. So while everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, Toby Booth's leaving, Mark Jones is taking over, with Justin Tipuric also retiring," I'm like, "Hang on a minute, I didn't even know that." The rap group chat was going insane. So yeah, and then I don't think I actually watched the full video until about like 7 o'clock.
Yeah. I had to go and excuse myself and sit with headphones in and watch it. Watch as a single tear roll down my cheek, which might not be an exaggeration.
I'm wearing a black armband tonight.
Permanently. I've dyed my hair black. I'm wearing all black. I have, in fact, convinced the entire New Zealand rugby team to wear all black next weekend as a sign of respect for losing Toby Booth.
And all their social media is going to say, "Our blood is black."
Yeah.
They're all going to have a blood transfusion video where they get black blood put into them. Yesterday, where were you when the news broke?
I was in my house preparing to go out for like a family meal. It was a relative's birthday, and I was just a bit surprised. Then I realised, how am I going to cram in a few words to write for an article and kick on with my season previews? So I've got one out the way, which is good. Two more on the go, and then maybe one final one then before the start of the season.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, Yestin's been cracking on with his season preview, but obviously we're privy to the group chat where he's like, stuff keeps coming up and I can't write about Cardiff not being able to defend Mauls.
Well, luckily the Cardiff piece came out first, and it went well. Twitter took it rather well, which was a lot better than I expected. But I've just realised that the glass right next to me, it is empty, which is a real kick in the teeth for this podcast.
It's
not an omen. It's not an omen at all. No,
I'm just waiting for my phone to have like a number of messages saying, "You just got a glass half empty attitude towards Wales rugby." Well, it is fully empty tonight, just by the state of that glass.
It feels that way a bit. It feels that way. I think it's been an interesting week, and I think I kind of speak for most Ospreys fans when I say that we wanted Toby Booth to stay.
Yeah.
I again, spoke to a friend of the pod, Josh Gardner, and we were just saying like neither of us could imagine or could remember a coach in Welsh rugby, perhaps in all of rugby, as outright popular as Toby Booth. Like in Wales, I think through every regional coach, and all of them have had, even Pivac at the Scarlet's Peak still had some kind of naysayers. Gatland in sort of 2018-19, when Wales were winning everything, got to number one in the world, still had people who didn't like him because he didn't play, exciting enough rugby. I don't know anyone over the last year, anyone who was a doubter of Toby Booth 18 months ago, has come around over the course of last season, where they overperformed so drastically on the basis of, where they were expected to be. And he also is just like the most charming, erudite, like wonderful interview. And everything you read, everything you hear, the amount of people that just won over by him that weren't necessarily, big Ospreys fans to start with. I think he was, I don't remember ever seeing a coach in Wales as popular as him, and to see him gone and have that news come out of nowhere so suddenly, there was no rumours, there was no kind of, talk around it. It just happened. It just came, and it sounds like that was the same with the players, same internally. It came very quickly over the course of the few years leading into that. Yeah, it was a real shock and a real surprise. And we were quite glib at the start about it, but like I think it did kind of really hit a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think so. So for those who don't know, I mean, how for a start, we are talking about the announcement on Friday in replacement of second episode of Behind the Mask, where they gathered Lance Bradley, Toby Booth, and they invited Wales Online journalist and all-round good guy Ben James down to what was Castellamare restaurant in Swansea, just past the Mumbles. Very nice place. And Toby Booth announced that this season would be his last. And sort of went through the reasons why, what he'd achieved, and is very much, having watched it a few times, and I'd love to get a body language expert in and all that. But on the face of it, and he's never been one to bullshit people.
No.
But essentially he says, I've taken this group to where I want to take them. And when I came in, I had goals, and now I've achieved them. That's essentially what he said. Which in pro sport, not all coaches can say they've done that.
No.
Because he didn't, and I said this in my tweet on the account, so if you want to go back and look at it, he didn't come in and promise overnight success. He didn't come in and say, with this squad, we're going to go win the Challenge Cup next season, or we're going to, drastically go up to the playoffs in what was the Pro 14 at the time. But what he did say, I'm going to create a program that is uber effective, essentially. I'm going to
create young players.
Yeah, I'm going to create a self-sustainable ecosystem, essentially, within a club.
Yeah.
And he has, because he's rattled off what he said and what he's done, and you can't argue with it. No. He came in at a time where we had plenty of academy graduates. We're at rock bottom. If rock bottom had a basement, we were the tenants of it. Yeah.
And the only, COVID walk you had around the day was Aled Davis's face charged down.
Yeah.
Like, it was miserable.
We were losing, and Yestin was there 44-0 to Scarlets.
Yeah, so, it was. But I think the other thing is that we weren't just losing, we were playing without an identity and without any joy in the team. Yeah. And obviously, I'm speaking as outside. I wasn't a member of the team or even the backroom staff, but like, it felt just dire. It felt like none of the players looked like they were enjoying themselves, and they were losing. And then on top, they were playing without a structure, identity. You don't have a sense of who this team were, what they represented. And the biggest achievement of the Booth regime is installing that identity and giving that sense of what it means to play for the Ospreys, what this team represents and who this team are. And I loved watching them more than any other team I've ever had the privilege of watching, because they have a richer and bolder sense of identity than any other team I could, care to think of. And they feel like they represent me, as a person. I don't think I'm alone in that, but I feel like I look at that team and I'm like, yeah, it's a group of, in many cases, lads my age going out, or younger still, increasingly much younger, going out. And, I think it's typified by the likes of, Harry Deeves and Kieran Williams and so on.
We're going to come on to Deeves later.
Yeah. Who perhaps
what I think
they're perhaps not the most talented players in the world. I hope, I don't mean any slight by them, but they work so unbelievably hard, and that's how they got where they are. Either. No,
they're not the biggest squad.
They weren't. Very few of these players, Dewi Lake and Jack Morgan may being the two exceptions, but have been given the kind of natural grace of God gifts that a lot of world-class rugby players, a lot of professional rugby players are given. Instead, they've got there by grafting, and they built a team around that. And that to me has meant more than, the kind of Scarlet style offloading that Pivac brought in or any other structure or even, more success. I'd rather be watching this team as they are now, scrapping into the playoffs and making the knockout stage of Europe out of nowhere than necessarily watching, the Galacticos era win Europe. It's been, an unbelievable kind of privilege. And that has come from the spirit, the culture, and everything Toby was brought in from the top down.
There is a bit, yes, I'm going to come on to you in a second. There is a bit in a BBC article today where I believe it was the URC Welsh Media Day. And Dewi Lake spoke very well to the press, actually. And you can see it's still sinking in for the players and whatnot. And I'm going to come on to that later. But he said, and this is verbatim from BBC Sport, Booth's legacy will be bringing through young players. Toby's always pushed giving young boys an opportunity from when I started under him, so that's always been his philosophy. It's got to a point now where we've got a strong group of young boys that have come through under that regime. We've got older boys that keep holding us down, keeping us accountable, and younger boys again bringing that energy, and want to get on that field to show what they do. That pulled together last year, and that group has created what you saw last season. And then it goes through a sort of listing off, where we are and what we did, and that will always be his legacy. So yes, then talk me through what your feelings around the Booth era and sort of where we are, where we're going to, and how do we cope in a post-Booth world?
Well, some would argue it's kind of tough to kind of see where it is, because I think quite a few people probably expected Booth to stay on, and like Dewi Lake said earlier, it's a bit of a shock that he's, the end of the season there will be no more Toby Booth, and it's a very, very interesting world that we now head in, and my dad was very optimistic about it on Friday night, and about a whole bit of change, especially with St Helens coming in as well. But it's going to be an interesting one. I think everyone's kind of ticked all the boxes about the younger players. The Booth's mentioned, the amount of times he's mentioned the first group of players and the second group of players, and basically every press conference last season. And that was the job that he set himself out to do, was to develop young players. From one of his first ever meetings with the press back in July 2020, or might have been August 2020, he said that, youth player development on the youth is going to be really big, and certainly he's done that. Given a new, wouldn't want to say leash of life, but certainly helped players transform dips in forms as well, as we saw in the back end of 2020 going into 2021. And then you've just got the willingness of just finding a way, in games where the Ospreys might have gone down by a couple of scores at half time, and then all of a sudden you're looking at it and you're thinking they can still chip away at this Leeds. Look at Edinburgh last March, where I think it was something like 16-3 at the interval, and you didn't really feel like the Ospreys were out of it, despite missing maybe the odd attacking chance in the first half. In the second half, they came out, scored a try within the first 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, this game on. So, yeah, it's for Ospreys supporters out, that's probably a real gutter to see him go. And well, I'm glad that he won't be there to call out my glass half empty attitude towards Welsh rugby. As a coach, and Ospreys supporters, Ospreys players will miss him fondly, but it's still quite an exciting, era next up under Mark Jones, because that man has travelled quite far. His CV's in light of coaching appointments. When you're doing something right, when the Crusaders take you on in any shape or form. Maybe not Scott Penny this year, but maybe there's other coaches out there. And yeah, it's it's going to be really interesting to see what is that style. There's a lot of younger players that have played under Mark Jones with the under-20s. going to name check Morgan Morse and Dan Edwards because they were definitely two of them. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all kind of clicks. And is there much of a change really between a side coached by Toby Booth and a side coached by Mark Jones? And I think there might be a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, Boothy Bingo becomes Boise Bingo.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. It doesn't have the same room. What are we going to do instead? Like, I don't know. What other like pub games can we name after for Mark Jones's press conference? Like, I don't know, Boise's.
Mark's darts.
Mark's darts, yeah. I wonder if he likes darts. He might do.
This is the questions we're here to ask.
Yeah.
This is why we've got such a big news week. And we're like, you know what? Let's run through pub game by pub game and speculate whether each member of the coaching staff, just Justin Tippery, like table football. I'm saying yes.
Well, this is really sad, but I always remember like years and years and years ago, like 2012, they did like getting to know players. And Tipprick said like, who's your best friend at the Ospreys? And he went, Aaron Jarvis, because he likes playing Football Manager with me. But you like, we'll come on to Tipprick, but you hear the rumors about Tipprick, like him and Faletau locked themselves away in their room just to play FIFA.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that's that, yeah, that I can see that happening.
I wonder if this has all been built by him playing Rugby Union Manager 4.
Yeah,
because I took the Ospreys to the European Cup on that.
He's the one with 4,000 hours because he's taken like Van to the top 14 title in Champions Cup. I think for me, to close off, I think we wanted to very much keep this positive about Booth moving on because that's what we are. We're not ones to dwell on negativity. I think the clip I always come back to with Toby Booth is the instant like match interview by Lauren Jenkins after the Edinburgh game, which was the first game or the second game at home after Ivan Phillips lost his leg.
Yes.
And he can't get his words out. He starts playing with his ear. You could see him welling up. And he says, you know, it just so happens to be Ivan's birthday. We did it for him. You know, we were 14-0 down at some point with Lloyd Ashley in the bin and no one, he was like, I didn't panic at all because I trusted this group. And it really just hit home how much a coach can get to know and know to love a group of players.
Yeah. And
let's be frank, Toby Booth's time at the Ospreys has never ever been smooth. He among other things, he had to deal with one of his best young players losing his leg. Right. And let's not beat around the bush. Ivan Phillips was having a fantastic season up to that point.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt, and I maintain this, that he would be playing for Wales.
Yeah. Probably would have gone to the World Cup following, alongside Cowie.
No doubt about it at all. And I will die on that hill. He had to deal with not only one of his best young players losing his leg, but then had to manage a squad through that. And I remember that Sale game. And I don't remember it because we lost and they should have had a red card and whatnot. I remember it because it was the emotion behind it.
Yeah.
And I remember that Edinburgh game and seeing that interview afterwards when I got home. I wanted to cry. But that will always be the image I have of Toby Booth.
Yeah.
Is someone who made me just care.
It was that game that sent it over the top for me. I remember the Edinburgh again, but his first league game on that first season. And I remember the joy of Matt Provorou scoring that try, Keith making the break and him doing the step and scoring under the post, Provorou. And having this feeling rush back to me of remembering how much I used to love watching the Ospreys. During the late period Tandy era, the early period Tandy era, there's a bit in the middle we, perhaps don't talk about. No, actually, whatever. Anyway, but during the period where they were good, where they stood out, where like it was a highlight of my week and it was something I looked forward to every week. And, there are periods where I was, my mental health was struggling or things weren't great or there wasn't a lot going on or, when I was unemployed and so on, pre-Squid Rugby, where, yeah, the thing that would get me through the week sometimes was thinking, well, the Ospreys are playing well. And I suddenly remember having a moment of that rushing back all at once during that first game against Edinburgh. And that hope continuing, kind of hitting ahead, I think, in that next game against Edinburgh, where, yeah, as you say, they come through and win against the top of the table Edinburgh side on Ethan Phillips' birthday, and Booth, welled up and started crying after the final whistle. And I had already, by the time the full-time whistle went, this feeling of like I'd never felt more connected to or proud of this team. And they'd done it without all the big Welsh stars. They'd done it without all the big names. Tipuric wasn't playing. Alan Wynne wasn't playing. All of the regular starters weren't there. But they'd come through and they'd done it with this young group of players. And that really, I think, cemented the identity of who they were. Some of those players, like Jack Morgan, who's outstanding in that game, went on to become big stars of their own. But a lot of them have just become, the likes of Morgan Morris, the Sam Parrys of the world who have been there a longer time have become, Keith, like absolute like icons of what this team represents and who they are. And yeah, there's just like there's a handful of games. I guess we'll cover this over the course of the season, but that for me cemented this team as a special one. And even though to this point they haven't won a trophy, and I've got an increasing sneaking suspicion that might change this season.
I'm sorry. We have won 2.
Sorry. We've only won the 2 most prestigious trophies in rugby, or we won it twice, the Welsh Shield.
I'm just saying, the South African team don't have a Welsh Shield.
None of them. The All Blacks don't. The Springboks don't, though. I will get tweets for saying that.
Victor Sekekete and Daniel Kasende do.
They do. They have honorary Welsh Shields.
Well, no, they have a full Welsh Shield because they were part of squad members.
Yeah. Would they get I assume, did they get a medal for it, or is it just like the hubcap handed out?
I think they just get the hubcap.
Yeah.
And obviously the pride and
the pride
that go with it, yeah.
The absolute delight.
I mean, nothing will beat. And I'm just going to say this because this has irked me since Judgment Day, right? So
URC'd you.
Yeah, we won it, and we celebrated in our car park.
Yes.
At Clandarcy, where like clearly being illuminated by someone's car. And then Cardiff won it the year after that awful Judgment Day game. Where we were just awful. And
I would have handed it out.
Yeah, where you would have handed the trophy.
I would have handed the trophy out.
We won it at Judgment Day this year at Cardiff City Stadium. They didn't give the bastard to us.
God damn it.
I'm just saying.
We had bigger things going on, in fairness.
No, to be fair, we did. But I wanted to laugh at Cardiff fans around me because we had been handed that. Anyway, yeah, you are
probably because I wasn't there. That's probably the reason I didn't get handed out. They were waiting for me to turn up.
Bethan's just like, no, right, we're cancelling it. Robbie's not here.
She still hasn't watched Marry Me, by the way, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, no, just like I think, again, I've seen a few people share the same sentiment. I will stand by the best coach the Ospreys have ever had, and I think by a clear margin, and my favourite coach the Ospreys have ever had as well.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. I think Yestin does too.
Yes, so, you have to be very, very good coach to get close to that now, actually.
This is what we need to talk about next. Yes. Because the second half of that video introduced Mark Jones, current defence coach, and Justin Tipuric, current long-head individual. They were suitably announced as head coach and defense coach. Now, I have thoughts on this, and they're all good, actually. I genuinely think they're all good. So the last time we did something like this, right? Admittedly, we sacked a coach mid-season, but we said we are going on a worldwide hunt for a world-class coach, and we ended up with Alan Clark, who was our forwards coach, right?
Yeah.
So basically in-house, and it was a disaster. Hence where we are now. This time, we have gone to in-house and seen that Mark Jones is there, and have he's obviously gone through a interview process and presented his vision to the board and whatnot, and they have given him the job. And I think we'll talk about Tipuric separately, but there's a different vibe around it this time because everything you hear about Mark Jones is positive.
Yes,
about him as a coach, him as a man manager, him as a tactician. Maybe he doesn't see the game like Toby Booth does in that analytical way, but he's a very good reader of the of this of the game. And he finished playing in 2010, right? He's not that far removed from the game. His career ended far too early anyway. So just to go through his coaching sort of quota, started off as Scarlet's backs coach for 5 years, sorry. In that time, he was also interim Wales back coach when Gatland was away with the Lions in 2013, where Wales didn't actually play some awful rugby. I would just like to point out in that period, they played some quite good rugby. He then coached Rotherham in 2015 to 2016, taken over from Lee Blackett. He then coached RGC to their most successful period in 2016, 2019. I think, Yeston, you probably know a bit more about that than me. But they played some sexy rugby there. He then coached Namibia in 2019, which means there probably would have been a Leslie Klim, Mark Jones crossover. Then he was Crusaders and Canterbury backs and attacks coach. Obviously in that dynasty with Razor and Rog. And then was defence/kicking coach in Worcester, which admittedly at that time was a sinking ship. And
so the interesting thing that happens in that period as well is that he accepts the job of Worcester when they have that massive injection of cash that they clearly didn't actually have. So they signed Dylan van der Merwe that same year. They signed a whole bunch of players. Like they brought in
it's a couple of Scotland boys, wasn't it? It was
Sutherland was one of them.
Rory Sutherland,
yeah.
But they brought in like 5 or 6 big money signings, including Mark Jones being one of them from the Crusaders. That summer, before he was due to start with Worcester, Eddie Jones approached him to be the England defence coach.
Yeah,
and he turned them down in order to, because he just signed for Worcester, he hadn't played a game yet, and he wanted to actually establish himself. So he turned down Eddie Jones, with the chance of being international defence coach as well.
Yep, and then took over as Wales under-20s coach for the summer.
Following Worcester falling apart.
Following Worcester falling apart, and then took the job as Ospreys defence coach. So this thing Mark Jones hasn't coached is quite clearly wrong. I am quite optimistic for Boise taking over, simply because he is a product of the system. And what I mean by that is we have been very careful in selecting coaches, right? We've not always got it right, Brock James being one. But when we talk about the pathway, we're not just talking about players. So we're not talking about the pathway of academy to senior squad to Wales to Lions, right? We're talking about coaches as well. Because obviously Mike Rudder came in as well. Duncan Jones was promoted from scrum coach to first team coach as well as scrum. You have Richard Kelly come in, again, ex-player, to be on transition and line out. And then you bring in Mark Jones, again, obviously not an Ospreys player, but ex-player. Look then through the academy and the SRC clubs. What do you see now? Well, Bridgend have got Matthew Morgan and Scott Bolden and Bradley Davis. You look at Swansea, have Hugh Gustafsson, Tom Grabham, Joseph Thomas, Aberavon, have Nick White, who's involved in the Ospreys Academy. You have Paul James within the academy. You have James Hook within the academy. the pathway works.
Hmm.
So Mark Jones is simply a product of that pathway. And a lot of people said when he came in that he is the next coach of the Ospreys.
Yeah.
And that has come to fruition.
It was always what I imagined when he came in, was that he would take over from Booth one day. I didn't think it'd be this soon, but that felt the case. I think the other thing about Mark Jones is that he has done the same path that Ronan Nagara did, in that he's gone away and instead of just coaching at a local, his local club and climbing through and ending up like a sort of, perhaps a coach at another region, who perhaps got the job before he was ready. He has been coaching now for 14 years, in which time he has coached across the world. He's coached at the URC, then gone to Super Rugby. He's coached with Worcester. He almost took the England job. He has become one of the most well-rounded coaches. You listen to him being interviewed. He has been in constant search of kind of self-improvement and building himself as a coach. And the thing this reminds me of, the situation this right here reminds me of, is Northampton. And you think back to about 2017 when we played Northampton in that, we were both on horrible losing runs. They were the bottom of the Premiership. We were the bottom of the Pro 12 as it was at the time. And both of us were doing horribly. Tom Haberfield scores a glorious try. We win back-to-back games. I will get Tom Haberfield into every single episode. But they then, Northampton go on and they do horribly and they just about avoid relegation that year. We go on and we kind of end up finishing, I think second bottom of the URC, and then the following year have that year with the 2 wins. Because off the back of that, they let go. Well, both of us are coached by bald men who are now with the Scottish national team in Steve Tandy and Jim Mallender. They let go of Mallender. We let go of Steve Tandy. They bring in, we bring in Alan Clark. They bring in Chris. Your man, Chris. Oh God, I've gone completely blank. This is annoying. I was going to say Chris Wyatt. That's a completely different guy. Chris Boyd, yeah. And Chris Boyd essentially does for them what Booth did for us. He builds a squad of young players who have a sense of identity to them, and they do incredibly well. And they scrape into the playoffs year after year, and they're like upper mid-table team, and they start winning local derbies, and they're doing well, but they haven't quite kicked on. And then when he decides to leave after 5 years, same as Booth, what he says is that, and it's the same thing Booth said in one of the interviews he's given since, that the candidates they require are all internal. We have everyone in the building already that we need, which I believe was Boyd's words. And so they then appoint Sam Vesti and Phil Dowson. And from there, their first season is quite rough and they're kind of learning on the job a bit. And in the second season, they go away and they reappraise and they think on it and they start changing into putting their own spin on what their kind of mentor that brought them through have been doing. And they go on and win the league. And, also take Leinster all the way in a semi-final. And
Which they should have won.
Yeah, which they easily could have won. I think there is every possibility of that being the case, of maybe there's a year's adjustment with this coaching team, but I think they are incredibly capable, incredibly able. I think Mark Jones is the best, or at least most promising coach Wales are producing quite a long time. The job he did with the under-20s was remarkable. They were pretty terrible, the Six Nations, before he came in. Then he brought almost the exact same group of players, and he brought them in for the World Cup, for the Junior World Cup, and they were suddenly fantastic. And they very, very easily could have beaten New Zealand. They were, 4 points short, I think. And
in a game they should have won again.
Yeah. And they were just universally brilliant across the whole time. And they suddenly had a sense of identity. The players talked about having bought into it. And again, you listen to something Booth brought up when he first came in, but the job he did working with those young players, the likes of Dan Edwards and Morgan Morse, who are obviously here now, and Lewis Lloyd as well, who he really identified. Lewis Lloyd hadn't been involved much in the Six Nations, and he really liked him, really rated him, and has now brought him through at the Ospreys. And I think that's the really exciting thing, is he's got a lot of the same philosophy on, man management, people first approach to that, as well as the kind of rugby smarts. And I am incredibly excited by the thought of Mark Jones being our head coach. I just wish it was coming a few years further down the line because, much I would have loved Booth to stay. I do think we've got the best person we possibly could have got. I think we could have gone and done a worldwide search. And with the budgets, even if we could afford to splash out for a coach, would someone want to come and work within the budget set for a Welsh region? Maybe not. I think we've got pretty much the best person we could have gone looking for.
Yestin, your thoughts on Mark Jones as a coach and then taking over as the Ospreys coach?
Yeah, I just want to go back to that point on Boyd. I think there was quite a lot of Northampton supporters that were really disappointed in a very similar way to the Booth news as well. So just another pointer to that comparison. You saw with the under-20s of what a job that he could have done as a head coach. I remember the time when the rumours was circulating about him joining the Ospreys as defence coach. There's quite a few people saying, he should be under-20s head coach for a few years to develop the crop of players that were there. And obviously he went to join the Ospreys. So there's no short of inexperience there. There's possibly a little bit as in terms of controlling the full squad, maybe not just certain aspects of a game. But he's learned off some pretty tidy coaches during this time, so it could be a really exciting couple of years. It might not be, the Ospreys are not going to be perfect from Mark Jones's first game as head coach. There's going to be some speed bumps along the way, like we saw with Toby Booth. The first few games when he was head coach wasn't exactly all well and good, but yeah, it sounds like a really, compared to the Alan Clark situation, the way he left in 2019 and how long that went on for, this seems like a really swift transition for an Ospreys new head coach.
I just want to bring you back to that New Zealand game because I've just found the team sheet from it.
Oh yeah, impromptu good player,
but just for the Wales bit, because I want to tell you this core group, and they are, and what Mark Jones can do with them. So you had Cam Winnett at Cardiff, not done much since. Clean Morgan, who was at the Ospreys, who I don't think is with us now. Yestin,
I believe he is with the Whites, but I'm not too sure.
So still within the system,
possibly, but I don't know 100%.
Louis Hennessy, Bryn Bradley. Great. Yeah, fine. Good players. Harry Houston was great at that under-20s junior. Dan Edwards.
Yeah.
Hughes.
That game was kind of the making of him because he'd been decent in the Six Nations, but nothing to write home about. And suddenly in that game, he went up gears and you're like, this kid's special. This kid can be something.
And then you're into your forwards. Dylan Kelleher-Griffiths at the Dragon. Lewis Lloyd, who had a great game.
Yeah.
Ellis Fackrell.
Again, announced himself.
With the Whites, so still within the system. Liam Edwards, horrific knee injury last year, but is our heaviest player and what I'll talk about later, tipped by Tipperick to have a good season. Johnny Green, Ryan Woodman, Lucas De La Rua, Morgan Morse on the bench. Evan Hill played in the Origin series of the day. In that squad, you still had the likes of Cian Hyer. So that core that he worked with in the under-20s is at the Ospreys right now.
Yeah.
It
is the spine of that team. Broadly with the Ospreys, the key positions, fullback aside.
Yeah, who, again, hasn't done much since.
Yeah.
He is, as Yestin says in the group chat all the time, a player. Not about Cam Winnett in particular, but just about
I'd like to take my opinions away from that.
When we just put random players in the chat. Say they're good player or a player,
but not Cam Winnett. He gets the good player treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he is good. But yeah, so that spine of that team, Boise will take into next season.
Incidentally, do you know why he's called Boise? Because I had to look this up.
Something to do with Only Fools and Horses, I'm imagining.
So yeah, Stephen Jones had nicknamed him Del Boy when he first came at the Scarlets because he looked a bit shifty. And then David
From
James,
Stephen Jones, who looks like he still
Stephen
use
Jo-
laptops.
Stephen Jones looks like he's been living in a coffin for 58 years. He looks like he's just been interviewed by Brad Pitt.
Stephen Jones looks like a Tory MP from the thick of it.
He looks like a Tory MP from the Victorian era. But bless him, love Steve-O.
Yeah, thank you, Wellies.
But basically, during a game, David James couldn't remember Mark Jones's name, couldn't remember his nickname, but he was something to do with Only Fools and Horses. So just shouted Boise as a random character from Only Fools and Horses, and for some reason it stuck.
I've heard worse ways nicknames are born.
Absolutely. But here we are, almost 20 years later, and probably more than 20 years later, and it's still here. It's still with us. We're heading for Boise Bingo.
So the other third of that announcement, which has been glossed over way too much, is the announcement of the retirement of, Justin Tipperick.
For me, the greatest Ospreys player of all time, and my favorite player of all time.
Yeah,
there's a reason he's on the logo of, the bloody somehow recognized brand I accidentally started.
But, my idol growing up, still my idol today, an idol who I at one point lucky enough called a friend and coach. Who I got to know his family very well, and I'm still very close to. I'm still close to that group. He, like you said, Mr. Osprey, the most misunderstood player for Wales, who was not positionally abused in the sense that like Hook was, but was almost shunned for that back row, which was obviously so effective. But we knew what was waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
He's announced his retirement, and that's just mental to me.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of it says something about how beloved Toby Booth's been that his leaving has overshadowed Justin Tipperick announcing his retirement. To say he is, all of the platitudes we've laid on before. And I did, when he announced his international retirement, kind of talk about him a bit on the channel. But yeah, a player that I think has meant a lot to all of us watching, and very much, summed up and exemplified and personified this group. And I miss him already. By the sounds of it, it's perhaps going to be a lighter load from the season. He's perhaps not going to play as much as he has in past seasons, because there's obviously another piece of news to come surrounding that. But I gutted he isn't going to play for another 16 years, because I think he could have. He didn't show any signs of slowing down last year. He was still as good as he's ever been. And yet I am very excited, and I believe in him completely as a coach. You'd know best, James, as someone that's been coached by him. But everything I've heard about him is really positive about him as a coach. I've been hearing for a long time what a good coach he's going to make when he gets there.
Justin Tipperick, as a, we're both from this, the villages and towns on either side of where he's from. So, but what he means to that area, and what he means to the Ospreys, and what he means to just to a sport, to a nation. Like, talk to me.
Well, first of all, I feel really old that all the players that I kind of grew up watching when I first started watching are now all retiring. Like, there's a good batch of them now, and I'm slightly concerned that the hair might turn grey sooner rather than later, the way this is going. But yeah, I think it's really fitting that both his international retirements and his retirement at club level have kind of been overshadowed in a way.
Yeah.
Because you had the AWJ announcement either before or after it. I can't remember which one, but they both happened on the same day. So you're thinking, well, that's not really fair on Tipperick. And then you just got this mass news that Toby Booth's leaving the Ospreys, and then Justin Tipperick, oh yeah, I'll just quietly announce my retirement. Just carry on as normal, everyone. And it's just, but the player himself, probably he's up there, one of the most skillful players I think I'll ever see. And I've been very fortunate to watch the All Blacks a couple of times. And you walk out of those games when they've beaten Wales rather convincingly, you're thinking, right, there's not many more skillful players than the ones that are wearing black shirts and black shorts and doing a war dance or kick-off. But Justin Tipuric must be very close to whatever list I've decided to make, and I'm going to probably pursue this evening. And yeah, it's just some of the stuff that he did. There's two tries to stick out straight away against Newcastle in 2016 and it's Montpellier, which feels like a few years ago, but it was only 2023, which was last year, which is a bit scary. But especially that game against Montpellier where it was going back and forth, and you kind of felt like, right, someone's got to stop now because someone's got to win. And then all of a sudden, Tipuric just pulls that out of nowhere, and not just by the kick, it was by the chase after it as well.
Yeah.
A man that is retired from international rugby still chasing up kicks like that was just probably one of my favorite tries I think I'll see live, with the exception of Ed Howley's header for Bridgend. um, but yeah, great player, and just seems like a really nice guy as well. And I think James will probably have more experience than I would, but during the warm-ups as well, he used to wear a bobble hat. So I wonder if he'd be replacing the blue hat with the bobble hat next season. So that might be the change of hat, I suppose.
I think for tips, there's a lot has been thrown at him that he's being jobs for the boys. He's going straight into coaching. He's no experience. This man is obsessed with rugby, like in a way that people don't understand. So the story of how I got involved with Chabanos, despite it being sort of my dad's family's club, I was at the wake for my great grandmother's funeral, and she was a Pontardawe girl with Chabanos roots, and everyone was chatting around, and there's a notorious family, sort of, we call them the mafia, within Chabanos, who sort of run the club. And I was chatting with one of them, and he was like, "Oh, you should come down. They've formed a youth team this season," and I would be classed as second year youth, so I was in that middle stage. I was down at Aberravon Quins at this time, so the club that Reagan Grace came from, and Reagan had just gone to St Helens, and I wasn't getting any game time, so I thought, you know what, it's closer to home, I'll do it. I remember turning up the first night, we training in the barn in Clandarcy, and I was just sort of stood there in awe that obviously my hero was coaching me. But just the attention to detail that he would do, because he said, I know you can tackle, I know you can pass the ball, I know you can run with it in two hands. So all we're going to do as a forward pack is just do lineouts. And for some sessions, we would do a lineout, the same drill for an hour, just doing lineouts. We never had a call, so we never had a prop run over to the hooker to give a call. We had a nod. That's all we had was a nod. And the hooker knew where to throw the ball. And at the time, I was a jumper. And obviously, if anyone see me, I'm quite a big lad now. I'm not a jumper anymore. I'm a lifter. But I was a jumper at the time. And the confidence that he instilled in you as a 16, 17, 18-year-old player, that you can run a line out and not call, was just something that you could never feel. You could never replicate that feeling as a player. And it was just, we had the best time in that squad with him at the helm. We had so much fun. You saw a side of him that you never see at a game or anything like that. You should just see his attention to detail and the love of the game. And when he's injured, he doesn't. It can be really easy for him to go sit in a hospitality box or not go to a game, but he doesn't. He sits in the coach's box, studying how Mark Jones runs the defense, or how Dan Griffiths coaches, or how Richard Fussell talks about the attack. That's what he chooses to do because he loves this game and he loves this club and he loves this region. So, I have faith in him because I've seen it, I've lived it. If he can instill confidence in a 17-year-old teenager to go out and make a tackle, then he can instill it into pros. I played in the same team as Tian Thomas Wheeler and Ewan Temblett, who's that Swansea RFC now, but was in the academy. We had a game. I'm very quick to do this. We had a game against Porthcawl, who were a league above us. This was in the Cup. We were playing at home. And he pulled us in and he said, have a look over there. And it was at the top end of the pitch. And they were just laughing, playing touch rugby for their warm-up because they thought they were just going to walk over us. And we won that game 8-0. All he said to us in the warm-up was, look at them laughing. Look at them laughing at you. And they haven't even kicked off yet. And we won that game 8-0. And we were just so up for it because he just said, that's all he said to us. And if you've watched the documentary, you see how vocal he is within that group. And everything is about enjoying yourself. And everything is about playing for the badge and playing for each other. It's not about the technical stuff of making your tackles, getting low. It's about enjoy yourself, be that person. So I am excited about Justin taking over defence. I hope he does well. I have every confidence that he will because he is genuinely one of rugby's, most intelligent people.
I mean, Toby Booth said a few years ago, I think it might have been last year actually, that Justin will be here much longer than I will be. And, that's proven to be the case. But the point was always that he's always looked like he's going to be a great coach, And it's something Booth said this week that the real thing that stands out in why Justin will make a good coach. I call him Justin. I've never called him Justin. He's Tips or he's Justin Tipperick. But yeah, why he'll make a good coach is his sheer selflessness, and that when he came in, he was the superstar player. He was the captain. He was the star player. He had the most cap, other than Alan Wynne. He kind of is the image of the Ospreys, right? Like you look at any thing of the URC clubs, Tipperick's always the player they use for us. Tipperick's always, and he has been that for a really long time. And yet we see it in the documentary and we hear him talk about it in how selfless he is and how much he kind of embodies that spirit of only ever thinking about the team, thinking about the other players. And that will come in as a coach. And we've also, and this was something, to mention again, Bethan brought up, was we have a year's transition. And we have a year where Booth is still there, but Mark Jones can learn off him. And Tipperick is still playing, but Mark Jones is still in a defence coach role and he can learn off him. And I imagine there will probably be weeks where Tipperick isn't in the 15, isn't even in the 23, and yet is kind of working as the defence coach, is very much running that role so that we've got as smooth as possible next year. We've got a full season of this handover happening, including perhaps, I suppose, the top one being, I will find it so strange to see Justin Tipperick not as captain anymore.
But just not in the squad. Like, not listed in the squad or in, watching the warm-up and he's not there and all this. Like, that's what will shock me. That's what will be an adjustment period. And I suppose, like, you can compare it to down in Park Scarlet. It's like Ken Owens not being there. Or like Josh Turnbull not being there for Cardiff. These players are talismans to you.
Yeah.
Being in my employer's environment now, seeing what the likes of Danny Kerr will be to Quins, or you can imagine what like losing Jack Nowell was like to Exeter. These players are talismans to your club.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another one off the top. The Northampton again, the Wallers.
Yeah. Laws.
Laws, they are, they've inspired multiple generations of players,
Yeah.
And Harry Deave said in the episode, we won't talk about Behind the Mask really tonight because we don't have time, but it was a great episode. But Harry Deave says, they say never met your heroes, but I'm bloody glad I met mine.
Yes.
Because he is the nicest bloke and he is the ultimate competitor. And that's what I want to leave that on, really. Because this is a happy pod and wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was potentially
200 plus games.
Serious hour we've done of rugby. But
I think it demands it.
Yeah, I agree.
Your blood is black for anyone watching. Your lights have gone out.
My lights have gone out. I'm hoping it's not a power. It doesn't seem to be a power cut.
No, because we're still on. You're still
exactly.
Here.
Oh well, right. We just keep going.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I suppose there's one other big piece of news, isn't there? That's kind of again that would have been a big piece of news, but is sort of fourth build here.
Yeah, Jack Morgan has slyly been announced as captain. So we sort of had an inkling that, or we had a prediction that it might be Morgan Morris.
Yeah,
but
the thing is,
makes sense.
Yeah, I remember having the hot take brewing that Morgan Morris should be captain last season, and then seeing Tipperick play again. This is when he was injured, and being like, "Oh no, obviously it's Justin Tipperick. Come on, what we talking about? What are we doing here? Obviously Justin Tipperick should be Ospreys captain until he drops down dead. Never mind, just retires." But actually, when you hear Booth talk about it, what they wanted is a player with the same kind of aura and same kind of presence that Justin Tipperick has. And that's not to say Morgan Morris doesn't have it, but Jack Morgan, he's a world-class rugby player who has done it at a World Cup, who has played for Wales countless times. And if you are coming in as a youngster, he is the guy who is most likely to be your hero. And I guess that's what this role demands. You look back over the last, 10 years? Ryan Jones was appointed captain in about 2006. He was then captain for 4 years. Alan Wynne-Jones was captain for, I think, 7 years. Then Justin Tipperick, this would have been his 7th year. This would have been alongside Alan Wynne-Jones. And instead, we have Jack Morgan coming in, and he will step up into that role. The statement put out said they're hoping it'll be, his for a long time to come in a similar way to Alan Wynne and to Tips. And, he is out of contract this year, so I wonder if there's a little bit of slyly trying to keep him in the fold, giving him the captaincy, making him the figurehead. But he's been outstanding captain of Wales, and I am, very excited to see him in this position for the Ospreys.
Yes, Dan, are you in agreement with that?
Yes, I think there's really not much more to say for it, really. I maybe thought could have thrown in the dark horse of Derry Lake, but you kind of had a bit more of like Jack Morgan's going to, is like the natural successor, I suppose, of him, just following up after Tipperick, and it shouldn't really affect much on the field, and it hopefully it'll be all systems go once the season does go underway.
But what it does in highlight the importance is a strong leadership group within your team, which again is something that we come back to under Booth, right? Is that we've instilled a strong leadership group because he will be away with Wales, obviously. So having your Morgan Morrises, your Ruben Morgan Williams, these players underneath to take that matchday captaincy is equally as important. I'm really happy with it. I fully consider him an Ospreys boy. The mob will argue with me to say Scarlett's made him he played 20 times for you lads.
And also, like, he was an Ospreys fan as a kid. He came through wanting and dreaming of playing for the
Yeah,
Ospreys.
he played
And this
for
is the role
Aberafon.
he's wanted. Yeah. He's wanted to be, Ospreys captain. And here he is now.
Fully admit that, he played for you and he did well for you, but he played 20 times over 3 years.
And they were the most miserable 20 days of his life. He hated every minute of it. I can confirm. He told me this personally.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really happy with that. Love Jack.
Yeah.
He's
a statement of what we want the club to be, is players like Jack Morgan.
Yeah. Now, we would talk about the Exeter game because, we won in England away at Sandy Park, which not many teams do.
No.
But none of us saw it and could see it because we all listened to Torquay United instead.
Yeah, to wander around the streets listening to Torquay United play out like a 0-0 draw. Yeah, but from some of the live tweets Exeter posted, sound like a cracker.
Yeah.
No, I mean I think the key thing from this, right, is this team found out that Booth was leaving the day beforehand, before that game.
I wanted to come on to, yeah.
And I tweeted this, but I don't think we're prepared for the sheer levels of finding a way we're going to witness this season, right? This is Booth's last year. This squad all love him. Dewi Lake mentioned himself, how shocked they are. And I think that becomes every big team talk is we're doing this for Toby. We're getting through this. And we've got one season to find a way before Mark Jones goes, make it work or whatever, steals Tim Gunn's catchphrase. He's a big fan of Project Runway as well, Mark Jones, probably. And probably. Just, yeah, big Tim Gunn fan. And yeah, I think what we saw with them somehow, despite apparently blowing the chance with 1 minute to go, Deves turning over next to scrum and then getting the ball out to Luke Scully, who dives over and scores the winning try, is the clear sign of what this squad are and how hard they fight and how hard they will go at it and how they'll never give in anything, even if it is only preseason friendly in the pissing rain. And that is a sign of who they are, what they're going to be. And yeah, you can't read too much into preseason games, but there is something here, I think, in terms of this squad is going to go hell for leather.
That we're winning the Irk.
I've got a genuine feeling that this might be the year. There might be something here. It might not be the Irk, but like that Challenge Cup feels wide open for us.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? So instead of doing good player, we've decided to create a 15, basically the best 15 to play under Boofy. No. So the parameters for this, they have to have been either brought in or were in the squad when he took over, and they have to have played under him. So this is kind of a mixture of our best / favorite, I'd imagine. Are we in agreement there?
I guess, yeah, the 15 of the era, if we're to name it, the 15 that stands out that we'll associate with the era, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think there's only one loose head.
Yes.
That we really can pick here. I mean, honourable mentions go to Gartom.
Yeah.
Definitely, you can maybe put Rhys Henry in that column, or you can put him in tight head. And Garen Phillips for sort of coming through. But Nicky Smith is the loose head. Yes, then you're in agreement there?
Yeah, I think so. As much as the development of Gareth Thomas, certainly through the early stages of the Toby Booth era, I think should be Nicky Smith.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember Gareth Thomas turned into Wales' number one under Booth's tenure.
He's certainly on the bench if we make the 23.
So hooker is a tough one, I think.
It is.
Because I think there's four, because you've got Ivan. You've got Sam Parry, just for being Sam Parry. You've got Dewi Lake turning into Lions contender and current Wales captain from a man
world class,
who couldn't throw. And I'm going to throw in the curveball of Lewis Lloyd.
Yeah.
Because he
I think he deserves a honorable mention.
He personifies of what we've been talking about, basically. And again, you go back to the documentary episode where, he's just singing his praises because he stepped in so well in that game.
Yeah.
Who do we pick, though?
My vote is for Evan Phillips. I think Dewi Lake has risen over this time to being a world-class player from being, a 19-year-old. But yeah, for me, Evan Phillips rose quickly and then also, pre-injury encompassed the spirit of this team. And then post has really shown, how tight this group are. And I think, he's an important part of this story.
I mean, not that me and Robbie can understand him, but I'm sure he's a great pundit too. Yes, Tim, can you confirm this?
Yes, I can back that after the years.
I'm sure he's fantastic.
Yeah, solid enough. There's some very interesting takes from Welsh language pundits. Very interesting at some times. But you can't. I don't think Evan Phillips says much wrong whenever he's on S4C ahead of a regional game. So I think his punditry skills might just put him in the 15.
I'm happy for Evan to go in there, but hooker is a rich position. Tight head.
I think there's only one man. I think he's, if Martin Gillian was here, he would tell us the statistics. I think Tom Boach has played about every minute, or at least every game. He's made at least a cameo in every performance.
Again, Tom Boach, defined that era of the Booth set piece dominance. I think, again, you talk about Rhys Henry.
Tom Francis.
I think Henry goes on the bench simply for that Leicester game.
Yeah.
Because he's a product of that academy who just came in and took Leicester to the cleaners, and Tom Harrison scrum. I can't emphasize this enough that, he. Yeah. So but I think you're right. It is Tommy Boata. Tommy B. Right, second rows.
I've gone for one curveball.
Right, yes, then tell me your curveball, and I'll go first.
Maybe. Then again, he has been injured for the majority of the season. I was thinking of chucking James Fender in. Just
interesting.
Another example of that progression into the senior sector, but then that injury did really, really hurt him against Perpignan. So I'm open for one change in my sector.
So for nominations, I've got Adam Beard. Played his best rugby under Booth, became a Lion. He's a leader. The cunt, who is in our circle is Rhys Davis. Again, signed as a fringe academy, Prem cut player from Bath. Turned into a test, arguably deserves to be in the test 15.
Yeah.
Fender will be in there. I can't think of any other. Hugh Sutton again. A product of the pathway.
I think. Look, I mean, there is an elephant in the room. I don't think Alan Wynne-Jones ever felt. I don't think Alan Wynne-Jones ever felt like a Toby Booth player.
No.
And there's all sorts of rumors about what happened behind the scenes, but he never felt like a core part of this squad and summed the squad up. In a way, I think that, the iconic duo Beard in the cunt, Adam Beard and Rhys Davis do for me. I think they will get my vote in terms of
I'm happy for
Beard being a kind of older head who had a drop of form at the start of that era, and Beard brought him back in the same way he did George North, to enjoying his rugby and playing his best rugby. And then Rhys Davis is a youngster who he's developed now into someone that feels like a senior player and he's international.
I'm happy with that. I put Fender on the bench.
Yeah, I completely co-sign Fender as in contention.
Okay, this is a tough one. Back row.
I think two of them are probably more nailed on than you think.
I don't think so.
This is the thing. It feels like it should be tough, but then I think of it and I'm like, oh, actually, I kind of can't. There's kind of three real standout names.
I've kind of got
nominations for 6 and 7. I've got Eastern Roots.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Harry Deves. Jack
Yeah.
Moore, Justin Tipuric. It is Justin Tipuric is one of them. I feel like it has to be. I am leaning towards Roots.
Really?
Because of where he is now.
I think we forget where Jack Morgan was at the start of the Toby Booth era.
Yeah.
You know, he was signed under Booth. Booth was our coach before Jack Morgan came in. He was someone
pre-match interview with the Dragons.
Yeah.
They hadn't even signed the contract. He was like, we're just signing Jack Morgan. Yeah.
But like Jack Morgan was just, a severely depressed man in Llanelli, hating his life, having to play for this awful team that he couldn't stand at all. And then he's thrown a lifeline by Booth. And the rate at which he improved, and I think because he is now the Wales captain, because he spent a lot of last season injured, we've kind of forgotten what a core cog of this, like the young Ospreys team he was and how good he was. You mentioned the Edinburgh game, the Munster game that season. A lot of those great performances. Man of the match at Walford Road in that win. I would have Jack Morgan as the second name in the team sheet in this back row.
Okay. I'm happy to concede.
Yeah, as much as I do like Ethan Roots, I think most of his achievements have come on after he's kind of left. As much as like the actual development as his time as an Ospreys player was really, really good in terms of you thought of him as someone that's going to wear a couple of penalties every game, then he turned into that Saracens performance as like a completely different player.
Yeah.
But in terms of like Jack Morgan now, of course, now he's club captain, so I kind of just feel like you have to kind of put him in.
I also think if anyone made the case for Harry Deeves, I couldn't argue with you.
Couldn't either.
Like, he's just been the most Ospreys player over the last few years. And the other name that I think deserves a mention is Will Griffiths, who, because he's had such a long period out injured, has kind of fallen under the radar a bit. But for a couple of years, he was just outstanding.
He was sheer workhorse.
He was so good. Yeah. Just like the sheer work rate he had. And also, adding in the line out and everything. He was brilliant. And he's, kind of through injury been forgotten a bit. And I'm really excited to see him again this season if he's fully fit again.
Shout out that one try he put Dan Evans in for at Europe.
Yes.
When he's just so comfortable in the wide channel. Right. I think the first name on the team sheet is at 8.
Yes.
And it's Gareth Evans.
Did we just... Sam Moore, mate. What's Sam Moore going to do to get in this team?
So somehow Guy Mercer's returned. No, it's Morgan Morris.
It's Morgan Morris.
Yeah. No player in Welsh rugby has had a bigger stock risen period than Morgan Morris has, where he went from, and I'm sorry Morgan if you are listening, a slightly chubby, slightly overweight 7 who came out of Hartbury University to being statistically the most man-marked player in the league, where he draws in the most. I think it's him and Keith are up there for drawing in the most defenders per tackle.
I think he's behind. I think it's him and Gavin Coombs are the top 2.
Yeah. It's pause this podcast right now and go and watch the Andrew Ford compilation of Morgan Morris, because I have several thousand times. He is a leader. He is consistent. He is, there's a reason he's won the Player of the Year award so many times, and the Writers Award, and probably won dinner queue monitor award in primary school or something. He's just, no player has personified that rise in skill level and in popularity, and than Morgan Morris. So I think that's a unanimous one. Would you say?
Yeah. I think you pull any Ospreys fan aside and ask for their 3 favorite players, and Morgan Morris will be in there for everyone.
Especially if you're Morgan Morris's mum.
Yes.
but the first 2 are Gareth Evans and Sam Cross.
or Hugh Sutton.
Yeah. Maybe that's where Sutton got his Father Ted box set from. was from Morgan Morris's mother.
A Christmas present. Oh, yeah. So are we going Jack Morgan, Justin Tipuric, and Morgan Morris as the back row?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
With Deavesy on the bench or Roots on the bench?
I think Deavesy on the bench.
I think Deavesy on the bench, yeah.
Especially if we're playing on grass.
Yes, yeah. That's a vital figure. Yeah, first game's on AstroTurf, so he's on the bench. Second game, we're playing on grass, we bring him in.
9 is an interesting one.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Luke Davis.
Really?
Hear me out, right? Luke Davis had a lot of off-field problems. We know this. This is well documented. He has come in and asked anyone at the club, and I have. They say he's the most polite, hard-working man who is up for anything, will do anything for the club. The hardest trainer, the most committed player they have. Because he knew that he was on essentially last chance saloon when he came in. And has it been perfect with him? No. Has it been smooth sailing? Definitely not. But I just see a different player. He's going to become a dad this year. I just see such a difference in him. And you see that brotherhood he has with Harry Deeves and Luke Morgan. And you just like, yeah, if that's not what the Toby Booth mantra is of man management and developing the person rather than as well as the rugby player, I think from a pure rugby point of view, it's Ruben Morgan-Williams. Yeah. But I think I'm making this case for Luke Davis because I genuinely believe that he would not be playing rugby right now if it wasn't for Toby Booth. Not in saying that he'd be in trouble or anything. I just think that he wouldn't have that lifeline of someone believing in him.
Yes, Tim?
Yeah, he's kind of nearly swayed me, but I think Ruben might have just holds out for me. In terms of performances on the field as well, and it's very close to being maybe captain for a non-international player availability fixture. Like it's quite close that you're thinking, maybe just might develop that leadership quantity over the next season or two. But in terms of like performances where he was when Booth first came in, and now he's really established himself as a first choice.
He is first choice. Yeah. I don't care what Kieran Hardy does. He's first choice.
Yeah, it'd probably take a good couple of games for Hardy to dislodge that off Ruben Morgan-Williams at the minute because of the consistency that he's shown.
Yeah, I'd vote Ruben as well. He was a player member.
I will put Ruben in.
I remember him coming through under 20s and thinking he was so good and so impressive and being really excited about him. He was part of that under 20s team that won the Grand Slam.
He was only 18 then, I think.
Yeah, with Keelan and with so many other, great players. And I remember again going to watch them when the Junior World Cup was in Manchester. And Will, my brother, was the first person to ask Ruben Morgan-Williams for like a selfie, which is fun. But then being so excited about him, he came and he played at the end, that year in Tandy when we were shit hot before things went to shit. And then under Alan Clark, and there are stories out there. I've heard a few things about how poorly managed he was and how he just wasn't getting the chances. And you felt like his development had stalled. And then Booth comes in and suddenly he's able to kick on. And, he was, 22, 23, which isn't young scrum half. In Wales, we typically produce a lot of scrum halves, a lot of decent scrum halves. And yet he took a chance on this kid, kept pushing him through until you reach the point where I think that Welford Road game, to mention it again, was a real coming of age for him. Yeah, and he was outstanding there. And then very much showed that even though Reece Webb was leaving, we didn't need to sign a replacement because we had a good enough player in-house.
And I'm putting it out there
been brilliant this last season.
He's not too slow.
No, he's really good. I love Ruben Morgan-Williams. I'm a big fan. I have been for a long time. And to see him like finally reach his potential has been really exciting.
Okay. Ruben goes in. I'm happy with that. But I've got my Luke Davis.
I think you made your case very well.
Yeah, I think him and Deves will go well off the bench, I think.
Yeah.
10.
Oof.
Oh.
It's Luke Price. No, right.
Oh.
So you've got your contenders are Jack Walsh, young,
Yeah.
uppity Aussie man brought in from Exeter. Owen Williams, story of redemption,
Yeah.
coming back, playing that Welford Road game, who I think he should have got man of the match for that game, personally. And you've got Dan Edwards, star boy.
You've got two other names as well. You've got Gareth Anscombe, who I always thought was very good for us, and then he goes and does punditry and he seems to hate us.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten that Ulster game, Gareth.
Yeah. But you've also got my vote, Stephen Goshdarn Myler, the great redeemer.
This is the other one.
Yeah, he was my foot as well.
Stephen Myler is the clear outright winner because of just the joy he brought me.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to sum up like the legacy of the Booth era is Dan Edwards coming onto the bench then.
Yeah.
Because of how he was managed last year. You know, there was like, why isn't Dan Edwards playing this week? And Toby Booth just come out saying, calm down. Like, this is for his development. He's young. Let his body rest. Let his body recover. He will get his time in the saddle. And gosh darn did he.
I think it is another element of the Booth era, though, because we talk about young players, and I think Dan Edwards very much sums that up. But Myler in the starting shirt sums up that he did an awful lot of finding not necessarily the star players or the biggest players, but the right players. And Steve Myler was exactly the player we needed most. Yeah. And he was exactly the player we needed. He managed to bring in a complete diamond in the rough. And there's so many of those where he signed players that were, put in the scrap pile by another club that weren't needed, that we managed, kind of scrape by, or no one had taken a chance on yet, like Ethan Roots, who were unheard of. I think some might have said described Milo as past his best and kind of done before he came in. And he came in and was fantastic and played his best rugby, in a very long time. And yeah, I think those kind of redemption, but also like being a great home for journeyman and for diamonds in the rough is another part of the Booth era legacy.
Shout out Josh Thomas too for Leinster Charlestown.
Yes.
He could go in there on just cult hero status alone. Yeston, I'm going to come to you. We'll do centres first. Tell me your centre partnership.
It's got to be Kieran Williams for one. The 13 is a little bit trickier.
I think 13 is a lot easier because I know who Robbie's are already. I think. I know one of them for sure.
Well, you've got someone like Owen Watkin, who is very close to being mine. And then, maybe similarly to, maybe not to the extent of Myler in terms of past his best, but some of the performances Michael Collins gave and at times certainly gave me a far more belief than I should have had going away to Saracens in the Champions Cup match when he scored from fullback in the first 10 minutes and assisting the try-saving tackle at Welford Road as well, which you mustn't forget. But I do think it's probably the centre pairing of Williams and Watkins, unless someone's got any other ideas of someone I've cruelly missed out.
So you've got your Hawkins in there.
Yeah.
Go on, Robbie.
No, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say Keith, Owen, test match centre Luke Scully for Benetton away. We'll always remember. Centre is Slim Pickens because we basically have had none but them for the entire time.
But we have had the greatest player in the history of the world, Kieran Williams.
Yeah.
Our Lord and Saviour, Keith from Neath.
Your friend.
And our collective friend who I once held the door open for, and he did thank me on a very short list alongside Jamie Ritchie and Sarah Hunter, the only rugby players to thank me for holding the door open for them. I just love watching him. He just sparks joy. and is also ridiculously good. And you can bring up any number of games. Glasgow last season, Saracens the season before,
Leinster.
Leinster, yeah, where he was just brilliant, and he will run into brick walls all day and win most of those collisions.
And despite what some podcasts say, he does have a passing game.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then we both agreed Owen Watkin 13.
Yeah, look, I am Owen Watkins' biggest fan and biggest defender, and I recognise this is a lonely place to stand at some points. I think it's me, his mum, and when I did a Scrum 5 pod at the Vale once, I saw him I'm going to say flirting with someone, and I'm like, maybe that woman as well are also on the list of Owen Watkins fans. And yeah, that is my list.
Yeah, that's fine. Right, wingers. I think one of them is definitely obvious. Keelan Giles.
Yeah. Keelan, I think, is definitely in.
Redemption, come back from their injuries.
Finally got in a Welsh squad.
Best season last year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Developed an all-round game, So much, he always had that kind of spark and pace, but so much the rest of his games come on.
And I think the other one is Matt Prothero.
Oh, yeah.
I chucked Prothero a fullback. I did. I've
gone for a different fullback. Who's your other winger then, Yeston?
Purely because of the charge then against Edinburgh, I put Luke Morgan in there.
Your other options maybe are. There are no other options really.
Oh no, I've got. We haven't mentioned mine.
George North, all right.
George North. I think because George North, people forget how miserable he looked and how badly he was playing when Booth first came in, and he then finished that season playing some of his best rugby on the wing, and then Wales forced him into the centres, and the Ospreys kind of had to, and it kind of stepped down from there. But I think he got back to playing his best, playing on the wing for the Ospreys under Booth, and was finally playing for smile in his face. Those 2 tries against Worcester,
that was the game I was about to bring up.
But yeah, I think he was superb the early Booth era before he got moved back into the centre. Had those injury problems before he left.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, George North, and then your contenders at 15.
Though I'll concede to Prothero. I will say,
your contenders
Prothero
at 15.
Plays 15.
Prothero, Nagy, and any other. Oh, you could put Walsh in there. Michael Collins, maybe.
Collins.
I think for vibes, it's Prothero.
Yeah, just that back three. Yeah, one more.
But just every time I look at his leaving post, I cry. Because he just loved playing for us because he was a Swansea boy. I'm happy to put Prothero in. I think it could easily be Nagy as, a product of a system who...
Sorry.
Go on.
No, I feel if we're doing this time next year, maybe Max Nagy's in there.
Yeah.
But I feel at this moment, Prothero's given us too many great moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll concede that. So our Boothy 15 is as follows: Nicky Smith, Ivan Phillips, Tommy Boter, Adam Beard, Rhys Davis, Jack Morgan, Justin Tipperick, and captain Morgan Morris, Ruben Morgan Williams, Stephen Myler, Keelan Giles, Kieran Williams, Owen Watkin, George North, and Matt Prothero. The coach is Alan Clark.
Whoops.
Sorry, Freudian slip there. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I overpowered that. I recognise that was my 15.
It's a team that picks itself really.
That's true.
At it. I don't think there are many arguable ones there. I think you can argue Hooker a lot.
Yeah.
You can argue 10 a lot. And you can maybe argue one of the flanker spots.
Yeah. There's a few we've got a lot of contenders, but someone does stand out once you kind of get into it.
That's it for tonight.
Yes.
It's a bit of a somber one, but I think a happy one.
Yeah.
Because, how do you react when your coach says he's leaving? So,
I mean, when it was Alan Clark.
Yeah, when it was Alan Clark, I had a fucking party. We will be back next week to preview the ERC, an actual rugby season that I care about. Sorry, Australian fans. But I don't care about the Rugby Championship enough. That's what Robbie's channel is for.
Yeah. That's my last 3 days.
It says something when I'm more interested in Long Eaton Colts than I am Australian rugby. Shout out Will Owen. We will be back next week to talk our favourite hunting ground, not Rodney Parade. Well, we will hopefully have a friend of shirt sponsor. We will have another documentary episode to watch, and we will have some fun. You can catch everyone on the socials, Squidge Rugby, Yeston_Thomas21. You can catch me, Ospreys Eyrie. You know where to find us. Check out the other podcasts. Check out the rap. Check out if you're interested in the Super Rugby Cymru that's starting this weekend. There's a lot of good stuff around that on our SRC podcast. Other than that, have a good night. I'm now going to go watch that Boothy interview after Edinburgh and cry. But yeah, have a good one, everyone, and we will see you soon.
We're winning the Challenge Cup.
Thank you for listening to the Ospreys Eyrie podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question, rugby is always the answer.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.